Rachel Druckenmiller.
Really application. I mean, it really was an unbelievable entry. All the judges really had nothing but glowing things to say. I think you're really going to have an unbelievable career in wellness. So, you know, that being said, you won. So congratulations. You are the number one. So, good job.
Thank you. When I started doing corporate wellness, the first thing I started doing was like going through your guys' stuff, like all the training that got out, like every single day when I got webinar. I've learned so much from your organization, and I wouldn't have known where to start with what I was doing, honestly, if I didn't have that as a resource. You know, this is like my life. This isn't like just my job. Like, this is like, I exist to help people be well, and so I couldn't be more excited to have something like this and kind of recognize that.
Check out Rachel's story and learn more about the Top 100 at dish.welcoa.org.
I never get tired of seeing that video. It's so cool, right? So with that, I would like to introduce and bring Rachel up on stage. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Congratulations.
Thank you. I can't even pretend to do this in a cool way. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Like I said in the video, this really is my life. It's not just what I do for work, and I'm so passionate about this work, and I'm so grateful to be a part of this community of people, and I'm humbled and honored to be among such accomplished, intelligent, amazing people. So, in the spirit of what we've been talking about the past 2 days, I just wanted to take the next few minutes to kind of share my story and some lessons that I've learned on my journey in doing this work. And the turning point in my career was on a trip to Philadelphia. I was with our CEO, Richard, and we were coming back from a meeting with a wellness vendor. And at that point, I had known him for about 10 years, and I was sitting there feeling kind of frustrated because I had come to a point in my career where I just felt like people didn't understand me, and I wasn't connecting in a way that I really wanted to, and I felt like I was kind of just marginalized as this young, excited, passionate person who just wasn't necessarily effective. And so I said to him, I said, have I ever told you why I do this work and why I'm so passionate about what I do? And he said that I hadn't. And so I told him my story, and when I finished, he said, you should tell that at every client meeting. And I started to do that, and things changed for me, and here I am. So I'm just going to take a moment to share that with you, what I told Richard about my story and my journey. I told him about how I had a history of childhood illnesses, from chronic ear infections to strep throat, bronchitis, lots of days of school missed. I had a half dozen surgeries by the time I was a sophomore in high school, and now have a 40% hearing loss in 1 year as a result of all of that. I was on countless doses of antibiotics, saw lots of different doctors who could never give me any answers, but just gave me another medication or performed another surgery. When I was 19, I was a rising junior in college, about to spend a semester abroad in Spain, and I developed acid reflux. And I was put on medication for that condition to take on a daily basis, and I did that for 10 years. And it had a really negative impact on my body, and I'm still in the process of kind of healing all of that. And I told him about how our wellness program had been an impetus for my weight loss of about 20 pounds a few years earlier. And then I got most excited and most passionate when I told him about my father, who is my greatest mentor and inspiration in my life. And he is a 5-time Ironman triathlete. He's on 0 medications. He has the energy and vitality and quirkiness of someone half his age. And he's 64 years old. And he's training with my husband and my 21-year-old sister for his 6th Ironman triathlon in Lake Placid next summer. And he's shown me and inspired me that we can age and be well. And just because we hit 65 and we retire and then our life ends, no, that's not what it's about. It's about that we can have this vitality. He's thriving in his career. He's as happy in his marriage as I've ever seen him to my mother, and that's after they almost separated when I was 5 years old. They now mentor other couples. I mean, he and my mother both are entrepreneurs. They have their own businesses, and so I've seen that you can do what you love, and you can get paid for it, and it's really awesome to be able to do that. So he has been one of my greatest inspirations. So I just want to share a couple other lessons that I've learned. Like WELCOA has their 7 benchmarks. I think I have kind of, I guess, 5 lessons that I've learned in my journey to doing this work. And the first, and it's funny because I wrote this all before we had this conference, but the first for me was to tell your story, especially the tough stuff. Because people relate to imperfect people. And we have to get to a point where we start to rehumanize wellness. I think what we've done by focusing so much on numbers is we dehumanize wellness. And I think it's time that we start to rehumanize it and bring in the human element again. And a story that comes to mind when I think about that is a coworker of mine named Jill. We were talking one day and she said, she pulled me aside and she said, "Rachel, don't you just want a cheesesteak sometimes?" And I kind of laughed because I was like, "Are you really asking that?" But then I thought about what she was really asking is, are you human? Like, do you just eat kale and quinoa all the time? Like, can I relate to you? Are you like me? And I realized stories like that really helped me realize that I have to be relatable. And that's one of the pieces of feedback I've gotten when I do workshops for companies about healthy eating and leadership presentations, is they say, "Gosh, you know, I feel like you were a real person." And so I would just challenge us to all try to be relatable, try to be human. The second thing that I would suggest that we do is to visualize success and to realize that what we focus on expands. Oddly enough, on January 29th, I have a journal that I keep, and on January 29th, I wrote in my journal, "Something big is about to happen, and I'm ready for it. Bring it on." And then 12 days later, that video happened. And I didn't have any reason inherently to write that down, but I did. And so I think sometimes in this field, we hold ourselves back, and we don't really go for what we think we can do and what's really possible. And when we're dreaming big and we think about possibilities and we just declare it, you know, amazing things can happen. But we have to be intentional creators of our life. We can't wait for something to happen. We can't wait for someone to give us permission. We have to go after it. The other thing that I've learned is that we have to stop competing and start collaborating. We are all in this work for the same reason, to help people and companies be well. And I think we can lose sight of that in this race to the top to try to be the first person that did something or get the most business. And again, wisdom from my father, whenever I get anxious about this and think someone's going to do something better than me or they're going to get there first, he says, "Rachel, do you want all the business? Like, do you want all the business there is?" And I'm like, "Well, no, Dad, of course I don't want all the business there is." He's like, "What would you do if you had it all?" Of course I couldn't handle all of it. So he says, you know, have an abundance mentality. And there can be, at one intersection, there can be 4 gas stations, right? And they can all do well. They can all do well. And there's more of them than there are of us, people that need help. And so if we just focus on what we can do to help them and celebrate each other, celebrate people doing stuff well, instead of competing with each other, we can be so much more effective. I'd say the 4th thing would be to get out of your own way. I think we have this syndrome, I think it's like a chronic credentialing syndrome. We feel like we have to get a certain credential, listen to another webinar, read another book, go for another graduate degree, do another certification through some organization so that we can put more letters behind our name so we have credibility. But the fact that we're human gives us credibility. And I think this conference has really brought that to light. And if we just have passion and we're clear on what our purpose is and we can communicate to people in a way that makes them feel like we get them, we can be so much more effective. So I would just say to get out of your own way and don't use age as an excuse and don't use experience as an excuse and don't use the fact that you may not have a certain credential as an excuse. If you're passionate about this work and you really genuinely care about helping people, just go do the work. Get out of your own way and just start doing the work. And realize that no one can do it just like you do. No one has your story, no one has your experience, no one has your perspective, no one else has it except you. So this is something I still struggle with, but I remind myself of that. And the last thing I want to say is to think differently. This is what has helped me get to this point in my career. If I didn't like the idea of talking about ROI, I was really insistent on it, and I said, I don't think that's the way we should go. And if I wasn't a big fan of an HRA, I was really clear about that, and I was consistent with my message, and I gave a reason why. And I think if we can focus on being okay with thinking differently, and the fact that some people might not be popular, who cares? I struggled to fit in a lot when I was a kid. In middle school, I had a lot of trouble with it, and I had a lot of hurtful things that people said to me. And so I just really think about the fact that sometimes when you're out on a limb, you feel kind of lonely, and you feel like you're a little bit crazy sometimes. Sometimes, right? When you're in this field, you're like, am I the only one that thinks this way? Am I crazy? So I just want to kind of close out with a reflection from the company that I think epitomizes this idea of thinking differently. It's probably a quote that's familiar to a lot of people, but it really, really just gets at me and my heart and why I believe I do this work. It's from Apple's Think Different campaign. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward, and while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who do. Thank you.
That was incredible. I feel like you should be a speaker for next year. But you know, this is why I love our field and I love what we do. I mean, the stories make this. And Dish was really unbelievable to read and hear and see what everybody's doing. I'd like to turn the lights on in the room for a second and recognize all the folks that are here that were part of the top 100.